And joining us now, MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid in Dubai, New York Times chief White House correspondent and MS Now contributor Peter Baker, veteran Pentagon reporter and author of Barbara Starr Reports on Substack, Barbara Starr, and retired four-star general and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, General Wesley Clark. General, I'll begin with you. What do you think Donald Trump is doing or trying to accomplish by threatening mass destruction in Iran tonight?
He's trying to use the air campaign and the striking power of U.S. forces to coerce a favorable outcome to the conflict and get it over with. It's a strictly diplomatic coercion. I hope it works, but as all of the people have said, it doesn't look likely at this point.
Barbara, in all of your years covering the Pentagon and observing this administration, have you ever heard a president speak like this?
I don't think any of us have, and I think the fundamental question as we go into the evening hours here on the East Coast of the United States is, does this country go to bed tonight? Does the United States go to bed tonight and wake up with the same U.S. military with a strong moral center that it has always had? Trump may be seeking to change that through his rhetoric alone. He's talking about bombing them into the Stone Age, about ending civilization. Even if he has some recommendation that he's bombing dual-use targets, so-called dual-use, power plants and bridges that are used both by the military and civilian populations. To say you're going to end a civilization, you're walking into war crime territory very, very rapidly. And the question for the highest levels of military command in the U.S. is, will they stick with that if ordered, or will we see resignations until Trump finds someone who will obey his orders? And if we're headed into resignations by top military officials, that takes the United States into truly uncharted territory.
Peter, is there a single person in the president's orbit, in the White House, trying to pull him back from the brink right now?
Well, you played tape from the one person we know inside that administration at the high levels who has been skeptical of this war, J.D. Vance, the vice president. Remember, he, of course, before becoming vice president, was one of the leading voices inside the Republican Party against overseas involvement. He was an Iraq veteran himself. As a senator and as an author, he criticized American involvement in what he considered to be stupid wars overseas. He said that if Donald Trump was elected in 2024, that would mean that we'd be in a period of peace rather than more regime change and more overseas involvement. So, he's in Hungary, as you pointed out. He's not even here to be part of the conversations that are happening, although I'm sure, of course, he can be in touch through secure communications. But if he's telling the president to do something other than what he's doing, he may be the only one at the moment. The president himself seems to be driving this train. And the question is whether people around him are trying to caution him or they're simply telling him he's doing the right thing.
So, General, if the president is surrounded by yes men, the one person who maybe has tried to temper things or at least express some discomfort is busy in Hungary. And we know from the reporting that the Iranians are not planning to fold tonight, that these threats have not gone over well with them. What kind of position have we put American service members in if they are to act on the president's orders, at least as he has described them publicly to the American people tonight by 8 p.m.?
My guess is that they won't act on the orders as he described them, but as they will find targets that are dual use, that are considered legal, legitimate military targets, that power plants that support factories that are producing military goods, power plants that support universities doing military research, bridges and railroad bridges that connect to ports in which military supplies can be trafficked or military forces can maneuver over these bridges. So they'll find military targets. I don't think they'll follow the rhetoric. They'll follow what's legal and proper, but there will be strikes.
But General, hasn't the president put them sort of no matter what in a very tricky position here? My understanding is, when you are assessing those kinds of targets, that is a very careful process that military lawyers go through. It is not supposed to be the president states what he's going to do, and then they find justifications for it or things that work for, his desires after the fact. But that's sort of the scenario you're describing here, where the president has said he is planning to send an entire civilization back to the Stone Age, destroy Iran. He has not used very careful terminology. When asked very directly, members of this administration have tried to skirt around and not address the question of war crimes. I imagine that has put military lawyers in a very difficult position tonight, where even if they do their very best, whatever targets they strike, international lawyers will look to the president's language and words and posts he put out to the public and have to assess them through that lens.
Well, first of all, I think the language is hyperbolic, and I think it's intentionally hyperbolic in an effort to coerce. I think, unfortunately, that's probably a misreading of the psychology of the adversary. I don't think they're coerced by that kind of language, but the president desperately wants a solution to this. He realizes, I'm sure, the trap that he's taken us into, where the strait is closed, there are no good ground options available, the air power alone can't address it, and the clock is ticking. And so it's a very difficult position for the United States. He's trying to weigh in the way he always does with his rhetoric and trying to push it that way. But I have tremendous confidence in the men and women in the armed forces. They're going to go strictly by the laws of land warfare. They're not going to strike civilian targets. They're not going to do things that are improper, but they will strike targets, and I'm sure people will die, unfortunately, and this war will continue.
Inzamam, I want to get your reflection, your understanding from your reporting on how regional partners read all of this, because the reality is, at least according to Iranian officials, the Iranian Red Crescent, even visual evidence that many Western reporters have gone through, the U.S. has already hit civilian sites. And so I think that for the American public being asked to trust tonight that whatever direction this all goes in, that it will all be legally above board, it may be a hard sell.
Yeah, I think it will be a hard sell. And as the general was pointing out there is most likely going to be attacks tonight, whether that is directly from the US at 8 o'clock Eastern time, or whether, in fact, Israel feels like they get a de facto green light and can start targeting places inside of Iran, which has to be said, they've already been doing today, and Iran has been retaliating quickly. Antonio, firstly on the diplomacy, well, all signs are pointing towards the fact that diplomacy is pretty much crumbling this evening. Pakistani sources have been telling me that there's no hope for a deal to be struck before 8 o'clock, for the Strait of Hormuz to be open and for a ceasefire to kick in. Our colleague David Rohde has also been hearing from some diplomats inside the Gulf who've said that the chances of a deal for a ceasefire are incredibly low. But then let's look at what's happening inside Iran and this region tonight. Well, this is a region on tenterhooks. It's on the complete edge, because over the next few hours, well, that's when the fate will be decided, what the president decides to do. Whether he decides to obliterate these power plants and bridges inside Iran would obviously impact millions and millions of people inside that country. And then you've got Iranians, everyday Iranians now being told to go out and essentially be part of a human shield in front of some of these power plants and bridges. We've seen some images released by Iranian state TV of everyday men, women, children as well, going and standing in front of these facilities to try and prevent from the US and Israel targeting them. Tonight as well, Antonio, in the last hour or so, the IRGC Missile Command has said this. They said, we will strike infrastructure in a manner that will deprive the United States and regional countries of oil and gas resources for years to come. Orders have been transmitted to local missile bases and operations will begin immediately. Already this evening, I've heard a roaring of fighter jets above me here in the UAE, suggesting that maybe there is some military repositioning going on to await any Iranian retaliation of some US and Israeli Israeli strikes tonight, because we know full well that this isn't just inside Iran where they'll feel any impacts. It will be the wider region, because Iran will strike the likes of the energy facilities in the Gulf, which again they have also been doing today, hitting a petrochemical site in Saudi Arabia, hitting sites in Bahrain and Kuwait, Qatar, and here in the UAE. As well. So I think this whole region will be on high alert tonight. We're hearing from some US embassies as well in the region evacuating their staff. And of course, the US military bases out here as well will be thinking about what is to come. I think what's hugely important is that whilst all this fighting has been going on today, increased levels as well, Antonia, along with the diplomacy, which clearly tonight looks as if it's failing and isn't going in the right direction. The Strait of Hormuz remains in Iranian control. It is the people on the ground in Iran and around this region that will be worried about the hours ahead.